Agile development is generally practiced in the form of one of the so-called agile methods. Agile methods include in particular the four listed here, and there are coherent sets of rules and practices that all draw their roots in the general ideas that we've started to see. The four best known ones are XP, which stands for Extreme Programming and whose author is Ken Beck. Lean software was devised by Mary Poppendieck with her husband Tom Poppendieck. Crystal was devised by Alistair Coburn and Scrum by Ken Schwaber and Ken Sutherland. I've given here the names of the creators of these methods because there's a strong personal connotation to each one of these methods that are closely connected to the personality of their creators and to the books that each one of these have written about the corresponding methods. The first one to gain wide attention is XP, Extreme Programming, which came out in the late in the 90s, and XP, Extreme Programming, can be seen as a reaction against the culture that was predominant in software engineering circles at the time, a culture that emphasized process, that emphasized plans, diagrams, things like UML or CMMI. UML is the Unified Modeling Language. It's in particular a diagramming convention for describing systems. CMMI, which is the Capability Maturity Model Integration, is a standard for defining best practices in software development. And these are all approaches that emphasize management, that emphasize process and documents. And extreme programming was in part a reaction against this, drawing attention to the fact that what really matters in the end is the programs and, of course, the programming and the programmers. In the end, it's not diagrams that work or not. It's not documentation that tells you whether you have a working system. What counts is the software, the programs, as we have already seen in the principles of the Agile Manifesto. So extreme programming made a major contribution by rehabilitating, so to speak, the work of programmers and putting programs and programming at the center of software development. Lean software is an attempt to apply to software a number of ideas and principles which have proved their value in other engineering fields, in particular in the car industry. There is the famous set of practices developed in particular by Toyota in Japan, which have been very influential, not just in the automobile industry, but throughout industry, in particular industries that make material things. And the Poppendieck's applied these ideas to software, emphasizing in particular the need to get rid of what they call waste. Well, waste is clear in industries that make material things, but the Poppendieck's claim that we should also be on the lookout for waste in software and get rid of things like, for example, useless documentation, which they view as waste, in order to concentrate on stuff that is going to be actually delivered to the customer. Crystal is a little bit different from the others in that it is more of a combination of agile ideas and more traditional ideas. Crystal is actually the name for a set of methods characterized by various degrees of importance of process and management. Alistair Coburn, who developed the Crystal set of methods, is trying to combine the best of Agile with the best of more process-oriented approaches. Scrum is the approach that has come to dominate the scene in recent years, and Scrum is less technical than, for example, XP. It's not so much software focused, it's more of a management method which emphasizes ideas that we are going to study in detail, such as the importance of self-organizing teams as opposed to teams that are closely managed by a manager, and the importance of a specific kind of short release iterations known as sprints. It's important to note that in practice these days, when we talk about Agile, we really talk about Scrum. This is the approach that officially, at least, most organizations using agile methods have really adopted, and it has somehow, on the surface at least, wiped out all the others. This view, however, is not entirely accurate, because when you look under the surface and when you see what people who said they're using Scrum are actually using, well, they really use a lot of ideas from the other methods, in particular XP. Especially when it comes to the more technical aspects of the process, many of the XP ideas, even if people don't necessarily realize that they come from extreme programming, have made their way into the standard form of agile methods, usually known as Scrum. When we continue at a high level of abstraction, at a bird's eye view of what agile methods are, which is our purpose for this segment, it's important to know that initially with XP, one could really view the use of agile methods as a reaction against Dilbert's bots, so to speak, against the management aspect in favor of the view of the Dilberts of this world. And it is this rehabilitation of programming that I've talked about. There's also another aspect to agile methods which is not that emphasized in the agile literature, but which it is really important to understand if you want to know what agile is about. It's the idea that I call negotiated scope. It's expressed quite clearly in the one of the books of Ken Beck about Agile. By the way, you can check the bibliography. When I say Beck 05, I refer to a particular book, and the bibliographic list is in the materials for the course. Also, while I'm at it, you may have noticed these little symbols such as shown here. These are not official symbols for the methods, these are mine, but they will be used whenever I present an idea that is particularly associated with extreme programming, with Lean, with Crystal, or with Scrum. So coming back to the negotiated scope contract idea, what Beck tells us is write contract for software development at fixed time, cost, and quality, but call for an ongoing negotiation of the precise scope of the system. And so what this means in plainer English is that in the agile world, people often renounce the traditional commitment to both quality, functionality, and to do all three of quality, functionality, and delivery. In particular, functionality and delivery date. So the general idea is we can promise you a certain delivery date, or we can commit ourselves to a specific set of functionality, but it's very difficult to commit on both. And so this is very much the world as viewed by consultants, and it is one of the implicit characteristics of agile methods. Well, not completely implicit, since Beck explains it here, but that is going to be one of the points that we will have to discuss when we assess the value of agile methods and how much one should retain in practice. So what we've seen in this segment is that a number of agile methods have emerged. I've cited 4 of them: extreme programming, lean software, Crystal, and Scrum. They share the basic ideas but differ in their goals and points of emphasis.